Sup fellow nerds, it's good to see you. It's been a while, but I'm back on YouTube talking about Doctor Who, but this time it's on my personal YouTube channel. Nobody else is involved, no one high up, no one around me. It's just me, it's just this guy. Nothing has to be binary about this review either. Nothing has to be pigeonholed, nothing has to be put into red or to green. So hopefully this whole thing is going to feel a lot more honest. And I'm really excited to be back talking rubbish with all of you. And thanks for keeping up with me. I do appreciate it. Anyway, this evening, Chapter 1 of Series 13, better known as Doctor Who Flux, the Halloween Apocalypse aired, and it's about time we took a look. So, we begin with the Doctor and Yaz trapped upside down by some dude in a weird mask hat thing, and at this point the effects don't look all that good. Now, admittedly, we don't expect things like Industrial Light and Magic levels of stuff here. It's Doctor Who, it's always looking a bit ropey, but this scene especially looked a bit off, especially compared to what effects we've seen before. Irrelevant of that, did anybody else have to turn on the subtitles at this point? Because Amy and I couldn't hear a bloody thing going on. Actually, after looking at Twitter after the episode, it seemed that we weren't the only people who couldn't seem to hear anything. Might need a new sound guy, Doctor Who. But amidst that cacophony of stuff, we did hear the decimation of Earth. So the Doctor and Yaz escape by flying their prison away. It breaks in half, they fly it like broomsticks, kind of, and then they fall into the TARDIS's trampoline, as you do. But anyway, let's go to Earth. Title sequence. Which wasn't a bespoke title sequence. Not exactly going to deduct points for that, but I was kind of hoping for something as big as Doctor Who Flux is supposedly going to be, we'd have a bespoke title sequence, but whatever. Boom, we're in Liverpool, 1820, some dude's building tunnels for an upcoming apocalypse, I think, and then we just go to 201 years later. I'm sure that would be relevant at some point in the show, in the series, maybe, at some point. Okay. So we're finally introduced to John Bishop's Dan, and he's been showing around people in a museum and he's being kicked out because he doesn't actually work there. He loves Liverpool, he loves this city, and he's being kicked out of the museum for being a nice bloke. Gonna say the guy who owns the museum's a bit of a bastard, but he organises drinks with this lovely lady and yeah, he's not gonna make those drinks, is he? Back aboard the TARDIS, a psychic connection reactivates within the Doctor and she's transported to seeing this dude trapped from supposedly the beginning of time, according to these two agents who, looking at their weaponry, pretty certain they work for the elusive division. Anyway, Macy here dissolves and absorbs one of the agents, does a really quite convincing cosplay of the Needler Reload animation from Halo, bit of a specific Halloween costume that, kills the other and escapes. 3, 2, 1, the Doctor's back in the room. The TARDIS is leaking, the Sonic comes out, and the Doctor is lying about everything that happened. Pretty typical fashion. So far, Dan seems like a pretty nice bloke, and I do really quite like John Bishop. Here he is volunteering at a food bank, turning down soup, and just being an absolute ledge. Once he's home, we know a little more about him. His cupboards are empty, he's supposedly broke, but he's prioritised having stuff in for trick-or-treating kids. I love him already, honestly, but he was being watched and followed by creepy hat dude who turns out to be a big doggo, Carvinista. After a pretty great exchange between Dan and this big heckin' pupperino, obviously he mistakes him for a dude in a pretty convincing Halloween costume, Dan gets cubed and off they go. The Doc and Yaz land in Liverpool too, and she starts scanning. Just scanning. Now, I've been pretty vocal about my thoughts on the Doctor just grabbing the Sonic and just going to town with it every time something happens. The Doctor in the past could, sniff or taste or even sometimes just sense stuff going on, or builds a machine that goes ding, but instead it's just the Sonic, and it's the same thing here. Once she's drawn into Dan's house, she even scans the glowing floor, then has a taste to work out what it is. Make her more physical, Chris. I've asked this before, but please, put the Sonic away for a bit. Anyway, turns out the Sonic has Chromecast built in. That's pretty cool, actually. She works out that Carvinista has been there, and also deduces that this isn't Dan's laptop. They escape, and the house is miniaturized. Bonus points for the joke about the bloke on a bog. Brilliant. But first thing. We, the audience, were introduced to Dan as a really, really nice, sound bloke, but is basically living in poverty. His cupboards are empty, etc. Yaz and the Doctor rock up and they just see his name and a picture of him on the fridge. That's it, and then the Doctor deduces this flashy laptop can't be his, and off they go. So how does the Doctor deduce that this laptop isn't his. We know, of course, that if it were his, he'd have probably sold it already to either feed himself or to get sweets for the kids trick-or-treating. But the Doctor and Yaz don't know that. They've not had that same introduction to him that we have. It's not exactly a major gripe, but it's a gripe nonetheless. Cut away to a random house on the Arctic Circle, as you do. This couple are arguing about chilies and a warning drone rocks up. Lady smashes it, and we move on. Seems to be about as useful as Liverpool 1820. Anyway, Chib is gonna chip, moving on. So Yaz is asking the right questions, as per. Why is the Doctor so obsessed with a giant dog? What is it about Carvinista that's so important? But before the Doctor can really get a chance to make excuses, it's Claire. Claire's here. You know, Claire. Claire, who we've not met yet, who we'll meet in the past. How will we meet her in the past? That's right, Weeping Angel. Yay. The Doctor and Yaz are now co-piloting the TARDIS, and that's flipping awesome. And when things don't go to plan, they get the hammer out. Nice little nod back to Russell T Davies there. However, much like earlier, the Doctor is still adamant to dodge absolutely every question Yaz throws at her. Why did the Doctor keep avoiding her friend? This is pretty standard behaviour for the Doctor, yeah, but it does lead me to something else I'm a little bit disappointed in. After Revolution of the Daleks, I was looking forward to seeing how the Doctor and Yaz dynamic was going to play out. When Dan was introduced, I did say back then, I was a bit disappointed to see that maybe we won't get much time of just the two of them together, but as we've seen so far, Dan hasn't just waltzed into the TARDIS yet. I was hoping to see this relationship play out in these 6 parts, but it seems to be that's already kind of happened. It's almost been a year since we last saw them, if we take into account that time in the Whoniverse is moving relative to ours. Obviously, we last saw them in January, for January the 1st, for Revolution of the Daleks, and it's been 10 months since then, nearly 11 months since then. So supposedly they've had all that time going out and doing this, that, and the other, and we've seen none of it. More of that relationship has happened off-screen than we'd have probably liked it to. Now, we do have the remaining 5 episodes and these specials to see more of that happen, but it does feel like there have been moments, beats in their relationship we've already leapfrogged because it's been nearly 11 months. Hopefully, things will happen between now and the point where Jodie regenerates. Basically, I'll retract this statement if we do get some proper good development between the two characters by the end of this era. Hopefully it'll happen before other characters rock up and potentially bog down the potential for characters to flourish. Anyway, speaking of characters rocking up to bog down potential, it's Vinder Bollocks. Yes, the special guest from that Comic-Con livestream a few months ago. He is simply watching nothing happen until the Flux arrives, decimating everything, and then he's out of there. Cool. Moving on. Put him in the bucket with the Liverpool 1820 and the Arctic Circle couple. Anyway, actually, the Arctic Circle couple are back in because Mr. Needler has rocked up. He's gonna dissolve old hubby, but wife, she's actually his sister. Right. Sure. No idea who they are yet or why they're doing what they're doing, but I'm sure that'll be explained in the future. Hopefully. Okay, so the Doctor has tracked down Carvinista and Yaz is gonna break out Dan, as we mentioned earlier. She's baffled as to why 7 billion Lupari ships are on the way to, I guess, enslave humanity, but in reality, they're there to save them. Because heckin' Puppa's a man's best friend, irrelevant of how big or how anthropomorphic they are. That's kind of cute, actually. I quite like that. They're saving their partnered race from, bada boom, the Flux. A big cloud of stuff that we saw from Vinder Station that's on its way to ruin everyone's Halloween. Lovely. But saving Dan isn't really why the Doctor's here. He's just collateral at this point. In reality, she wants to see Carvinista because he knows something about the division. And I basically cheered at this point. Very happy to know that irrelevant of whatever apocalyptic event is going on, the Doctor is adamant to find out what the hell happened to her in her past. Good on you, Doc. Anyway, back onto the Flux, because that's a little bit more pressing. The Doctor, along with the Lupari fleet, are gonna protect the Earth, hopefully, from the Flux's effects, but the TARDIS is still being difficult, and the Sontarans know about the Flux too. Gotta say, I do love the fact they've gone back to the classic era designs of these legendary enemies. One thing I've got to give Chibnall credit for is I love that flavour of the classic series he's brought back to NuWho. I mean, I mentioned it before, the Cybermen designs at the end of Series 12, my god, they were excellent. Chef's kiss, you could say. But once again in this episode, the Sontarans, you see 'em, you bin 'em. While I'm not actually done yet quickly running over the events of the episode, there's a thing I need to talk about, which is kind of the main thing of this episode. A lot happens. a lot happens. It's very much suffering from part 1 of 6 syndrome. Fellow nerds who have seen The Crimes of Grindelwald, you know that's suffering from part 1 of 4 syndrome. Now you might think, hang on, part 1 of 4? It's 5 films, surely it's part 2 of 5. Well, Fantastic Beasts was kind of standalone, nice little complete chapter, still led on to things, but Crimes of Grindelwald very much felt like a different beast. It felt more like 1 of 4, not 2 of 5, if that makes sense. Hopefully that analogy works. Moving on. Though it's far, far less severe in the Halloween Apocalypse's case. So now I've covered all of those odd tangents, I feel like some of them could have been left for later on. Maybe these are all characters that are going to be at the top of the call sheet for the rest of the series, but did they need to all be introduced in episode 1? Now the Sontarans are pretty present in chapter 2, so that's fair enough, but what about Mr. Needler and Mrs. Needler? What about Vinda? What about Liverpool 1820? What about Claire? Did they all need to be introduced right here, right now? As said, it's been 10 months since our last Who, both in the real world and potentially canonically within the Whoniverse as well. Now I get that COVID has made things difficult, so supposedly things did get cut out, things that were shot, but more likely things that were scripted got left on the cutting room floor. Exhibit A being, the Doctor and Yaz finding out about Dan's particular, lifestyle leading to him not needing a laptop that flashy. But dropping the audience mega in the deep end and offloading everything in one 50-minute session may not have been the best way to go. Surely some of those bits could have been left for episode 2 or episode 3, potentially. But I'm not going to say that any of those segues were necessarily bad, because I, along with I guess basically everyone else, are hungry to know as to how it all fits together and how it all plays out. But perhaps when I review episode 2, maybe I can look back and go, yeah, that very much wasn't needed to be in episode 1, that could have waited a week. But on the flip side, once we get to the end of the series, I could be eating all of those words, because maybe the way that things panned out, they needed to introduce everything in episode 1 to make everything make sense as these 6 weeks went on. So take this critique with a pinch of salt, but since I'm reviewing everything per episode, that's how I feel right now. So the Doctor heads back to the edge of the solar system and sees the Flux in progress. She sees the devastation it's causing, another psychic connection if you will, and thank you for putting in a contextual shot of what devastation the Flux is causing. And I've said this before, Doctor Who has needed to put more, already said this, context into something universal happening. Just some shots of people being wiped the hell out to really put across how much danger there is going on. So thank you for that. 10 points to Gryffindor, I guess. Is the Doctor a Gryffindor? Or a Hufflepuff? Or a Ravenclaw? Speaking of psychic links, Needler Boy is back at it again, and he actually mentions how good they were at wiping him from the Doctor's memory. Definitely the Division back at it again, I'm sure. Needler's sister, though, is stalking Diane, Dan's date from earlier. Told you they weren't going to have that date. She's lured into a house, transported to a swamp, I guess, based on the splishy splashy, and then bin. Lupari's ships are instructed by the Doctor to surround the Earth and protect it, but with all the TARDIS doors blasted open and the Flux closing in, not even pure vortex energy could stop it. The Earth is supposedly safe, but the Doctor has let this mess in through the front door. Plural, because it's a bit weird. We get one more look across the ensemble cast we've been introduced to over the course of this episode, and then there's the Flux, and boom, credits roll. So, it's a shame that Yaz and the Doctor have developed a lot off-screen. Dan looks to be an absolute joy, and I hope he doesn't turn out to be a bad guy somehow. Why was Mrs. Needler targeting Diane if not to somehow get to Dan? Or was that just some happy coincidence or something? A lot of things were thrown at the wall, and it seems to be that basically everything has stuck, even though, as said, there shouldn't have been as many things thrown at the wall in this 50-minute time period. Apart from the cold open, the CGI has looked pretty goddamn good, and I really don't understand why people keep criticising Doctor Who CGI, especially in the Chibnall era. Yes, it's TV CGI, it's never going to look that great, but it's definitely the best Doctor Who has ever looked. Ever, basically. Even just down to the cinematography and the lighting and just, everything. It still looks just fantastic. Hopefully Chibs will have explanations for everything he's introduced thus far, and since he's made this series just one big story, hopefully that plays in his favour and nothing gets left behind. If anything does, that's going to be a big red flag. Not that it hasn't been before, but yeah, even more so this time, because it feels like it should be quite easy to go back to something that was introduced in episode 1 because, yeah, it's just one big story. No need to try and shoehorn this guy back in somewhere else, so let's hope everything's tied up with a nice little bow. I went into this episode with basically no expectations, and I'm feeling pretty good about Flux so far. But if I can take a moment to be completely honest, I never went into Doctor Who, especially in this Chibnall era, with low expectations, expecting to dislike what I see. And I know that it might have seemed like that in the past. I'm sorry if my previous reviews made me sound like I never gave Chibbers a chance, that I was just being an ass for the sake of being an ass. As said at the start of the video, that is a huge downside to doing reviews that are basically entirely binary, green or red. I don't have that limitation here now that I'm completely independent when it comes to Who content. I could do it all myself. So I'm just going to give it a score from 0 to 10. The Halloween Apocalypse is getting a solid 6.5. I'm actually quite happy with how this went. It's not perfect by any stretch, but it's definitely felt pretty goddamn solid, and it's giving me a good vibe for the rest of the series. If honestly everything plays up to be this fine throughout the course of the series, if it's nothing massively groundbreaking or whatever, I'm okay with a series that just does it, and does it fine. I can live with that. But what do you think? Where does this rank for you from 0 to 10? Are there any points that you disagree with? Are there any points you really enjoyed? Let me know in the comment section below. And I work in YouTube, I've got to do it. Please do subscribe to my channel. It's my channel. It's me and 2 Planet Coaster videos so far, if you want to keep up with Doctor Who Flux reviews, because I'm doing the whole series and maybe even some Doctor Who stuff in the future, personally, just me, not where I was before. It's just this guy, it's just me. And also, not done with the plugs yet, if you have found me doing this from where I was before, Escaping Casteborous did continue after I left my previous employer. It's done completely independently as well, so please do check it out on anchor.fm/Castopod or on Twitter @Castopod. We continued on from where we left off, which was Rise of the Cybermen Age of Steel, and we're just about to start Smith & Jones Series 3. I'm sorry it's been a couple of weeks. Some big things have happened in Amy and R's lives, in case you haven't guessed what that might be, or you've seen it on Twitter and Instagram and stuff. But yeah, we're hopefully getting on it this week, coming Wednesday. I think we're going to hopefully record it, so please go and follow us on Twitter and go and subscribe to the podcast on whatever you listen to, on whatever platform you get podcasts on. It should be there. It's basically on everything, hopefully. But that was my review of the Halloween Apocalypse, and thank you all for joining me. I really do appreciate it. If you have come and found me again after all this time, I really appreciate it, and I've missed you, so thank you. But until I see you again, have a great rest of your evening. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you guys soon.